Hello and welcome to Real Menopause Talk. My guest today is Tate Smith, and we come to the final episode of 2023. When I started this podcast, I was thinking of women of a similar age to me who were all going through the menopause transition. I soon learned there are many types of menopause, all equally significant and, at the time, rarely spoken about. Surgical menopause, early menopause, premature, and trans menopause. And today, I have the privilege of being able to share a trans male menopause story. Tate Smith has won numerous awards, is a trans activist, consultant, speaker, and is passionate about trans male visibility. He educates others and dispels all common myths surrounding trans people. His accolades include being named one of Attitude magazine's 10 LGBTQ+ trailblazers to watch out for in the future. I was so delighted to meet Tate, to hear his deeply personal, often challenging experience, which he tells with candour, charm and humour. No mean feat, given the level of vulnerability he opens himself up to. There are so many avenues we could have ventured down, as there is so much to talk about. Isn't there always? We had to discuss testosterone and its effects, and bear in mind here Tate's endgame, but also listen out for the potential benefits. We also touch on male privilege and insights he's gained having presented female for 19 years and now living as his true male self. Everything we discuss made me realise that research is essential for the women, for the trans folk, for everybody experiencing this life phase. His menopause symptoms will be familiar to many of you, and as he says, we're all in this together. As we begin to wrap up the year, please remember to take some time for yourself. And I know that is so much easier said than done, but even 5 minutes to breathe can radically lower stress levels. For the longer term, especially when we hope the holidays are filled with joy and fun, but often bring a lot of pressure and stress as well, why not gift yourself someone to talk to? And put more ease into your life, give your mental load a break, and extend your window of patience. And I speak from experience here. Real Menopause Therapy is available for you now. Subscription is free. Sign up and enjoy half an hour for free as well. You can handpick your specially menopause qualified therapist based on your own health concerns, your interests, and even your work environment, so they truly understand who you are and they can bring you back to your real self. Go to bit.ly/RM therapy. That's bit.ly/RM therapy. That's capital R, capital M, capital T. And I'll put a clickable link in the show notes to make it as simple as possible. And now, the moment you've been waiting for, our guest, Tate Smith. Tate, it is so good to meet you. I know we've been messaging and talking for a while, so I feel deeply honoured that you are here today and we're able to have a conversation. So thank you. First of all, would you like to start by telling everybody a little bit about yourself, maybe where you grew up, family, that kind of thing, so people get a picture of who you are?
Sure. So in summary, and thank you very much for having me, by the way, I am a proud working class Essex boy that just happens to be trans, basically. Come from a very poor working class background, state school educated, free school meals, the lot. Worked as a legal secretary for most of my career, and then transformed into a trans activist, consultant, and speaker, which I now do. And I recently founded my own consultancy to help businesses implement trans inclusion policies and deliver lunch and learns as well, which has become my bespoke brand of speaking engagement.
Congratulations. Recently, I know it takes a lot of work to set up your own business, and it's going so well already. Whereabouts in Essex are you from? My husband comes from Chelmsford, so I have to ask.
Well, that's a very nice area. I'm from Loughton for my sins, so Towie Central.
Lovely. I know he will know it well. So we've been talking behind the scenes a little bit about your experience of coming out as trans to begin with and how you're educating everybody. And you've been medically transitioning for 4.5 years.
Yes.
How did it feel when you very first shared your experience, both at work and with the rest of the world? And how was it all received?
That's a great question because it's not very straightforward for me, I would admit. So I took a long time to realize that I was trans, mostly because I wasn't doing any introspective looks at myself when I was a teenager. I was just trying to get by, trying to look like the pretty girl, rolling my skirt up, caking makeup on, thanks to the Loughton girls for inspiring. But yeah, I just tried my best to fit in, and then I think I heard the word transgender, but didn't know what it meant. And then as my lexicon started growing and my understanding of the LGBT community, I stumbled across a video of a female to male trans person like me, so assigned female at birth and transitioned male, hence transgender man. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is it. It all makes sense now, and it didn't before then because I just thought that it was puberty. Like everybody was telling me, oh, it will pass, all these feelings. And I thought, no, there's something deeper here. But because I didn't have a word to put to it, I couldn't figure it out for myself. And it took quite a long time for me to grow the confidence actually when I first stumbled across that video at the age of 16 to sort of probably being confident enough to come out and live authentically. So, to cut a long story short, I came out to my family and did not receive a warm response at all, and that's just putting it mildly. And I tried to socially transition, so tell everybody, my name is Tate, my pronouns are he, for a couple of months, and just turned 17. And went through the NHS referral and everything, and I just was receiving no support. I had friends at college who were way behind me, but most importantly, I didn't have the confidence within myself. So, I couldn't even afford a binder, the compression piece to flatten my chest. I was cutting up sports bras, trying to make my androgynous looking jeans look like men's jeans, but I had large hips. So I was like constantly frowning to make up for the fact that I didn't look automatically very masculine. I always had quite pretty features. And I remember actually testing out coming out to my friends by saying, and this is so obvious, what would you do if I thought that I was a boy? I mean, I really wasn't mincing my words there, was I? But one of my friends said, oh, well, you can never look like a boy because you've got such feminine features. And that broke my heart so much. And, now luckily I just look like any other pretty Essex boy. So it's all worked out really with the testosterone. But yeah, it was not a nice period of my life. So I had to go back into the closet. And at the time, it felt like the worst thing ever. And I spent 2 years in the closet, just trying to figure out who I was because I had so much noise coming from both sides of my family, from society. My story wasn't the traditional trans coming out story. I didn't know from the age of two. It was. I loved playing up as Princess Belle and playing with Barbies with my sisters. I wasn't refusing to wear dresses. I don't remember that, but I did have that sort of rough and tumble tomboyish side to me. I loved Doctor Who. I loved, playing with boys at school. There was always that sort of masculine energy, and I think people really mistook that as I grew up. And actually, there were people who were telling me, don't you think that you're a lesbian? So all it was people projecting onto me. And I was only just turned 17. I'd realized something so big about myself. So I had a lot weighing down on my shoulders. And yeah, I went back into the closet and I stayed that way for 2 years. And I just thought, okay, I had short hair from the age of 14. And I just convinced myself that maybe I'm just like androgynous or something, like a younger Madonna, or, I've just got this gift of being able to look like both a man and a woman. And then going out, working as a legal secretary, just living life as female made me realize that I wasn't a female. And I got to a point where I had a very quick and serious relationship with a man, and he said he wanted me to be the mother of his children, his wife. And I was only 19, so that was scary enough. But the fact that all of those words were being thrown at me was like, oh my goodness, no. Because at that time, Caitlyn Jenner had come out and proud, and I thought my story is going to end up like hers. I'm going to get to 60 and I might regret it all. And it took another season, I would say. It was the summer of 2018. I spent so confused, just thinking, who am I? Am I a boy? Am I lesbian? Just assigning all of these labels to myself. And I really wish I had taken better care of my well-being and didn't listen to naysayers, and maybe spent a little less time looking for labels and just looking more at myself and how I was feeling. But luckily, by that autumn of 2018, I started living full time as male, and I made the decision to move out from my unsupportive family home to get a new job which would fund my private medical transition, because NHS waiting times were too long for me. And coming out in the workplace was another obstacle that I had to overcome, and it was very, very well to do. First couple of months, I came out 3 weeks after starting a new job in a Monday morning team meeting. So they said, any other business? And I said, yes, I'm trans. away I went. So yeah, and a couple of months later, it just became very apparent that my transness scared people, that me being so out and open and so young and knowing who I was and being their first out trans employee was just too much. And the line manager, the HR team, they kept calling me into frequent, coffee area breaks and checking in on me. And it was like, yes, no different from yesterday. And then because I told people, that I was going to be taking testosterone come April 2019, everybody started panicking, thought I was going to turn into the Incredible Hulk. And when it came to my probation meeting, uh, shortly after starting testosterone, actually, they said, we're going to extend your probation because we don't know what's going to happen to you. But you are actually really good at your job. And I thought, my goodness, that's a backhanded compliment, if anything, isn't it? And I was very, very early in my career, and I thought that what HR says goes. But something in me within that meeting, thankfully, said, this is not the place for you. Get out. I thought, I haven't moved from an unsupportive family base into an unsupported workplace. So I progressed my career elsewhere, thankfully, and luckily the future organisations I worked in were very, very good to me, particularly Clifford Chance, where I spent most of my career. They're really at the forefront of trans inclusion. And then I moved on to a smaller law firm, Memory Crystal, helped them with their policy, and then over to Gibson Dunn, an American law firm who didn't even bat an eyelid. And then throughout my work as a legal secretary, I've been out and proud and, speaking, but it wasn't always so easy. I had a lot of teething problems. There were some people that tried to out me. There were people asking odd questions like, why is your jawline changing so much, when I was in the closet. And so I kind of felt like I had to tell people. So I made the decision, with all of these things going on, to approach the diversity and inclusion team and say, I'd quite like to speak about this. And it just so happened they wanted to approach me about delivering a lunch and learn. And I thought, what the hell is that? And now fast forward 3 years and they're all I'm delivering. And yeah, so I've turned a lot of negative workplace experiences. A lot of them are very private and I won't touch upon, but many of them have been intrusive questions. What do you have down there? How do you have sex? Have you had the surgery? Well, what surgery are you talking about? I know what they're talking about. They're asking me what I have down there and if I've had genital surgery. It's so invasive. And I always say to people, don't ask a question to a trans person you wouldn't want to answer yourself, and you wouldn't want to be asked about your genitals in the coffee area or at your desk, which has happened to me. So yes, in short, it's been a very difficult ride. I'm really sweetening up, as I say. It was very tough day to day, with the unsupportive family, that first workplace. But the lesson in this is that once I came out and overcame that barrier of going back into the closet following that horrible workplace experience when I was at Clifford Chance, standing up quite literally on that 30th floor of their event space at the top of their, majestic looking building in Canary Wharf and saying I'm a trans man, it just led my life down a completely different path, and it boosted my confidence, and it's led me to the man that I am today, quite both literally and metaphorically.
And the man you are today is what drew me to you in the first place. And this is going to sound cheesy as anything, so I really apologize. But even on Instagram, you have this light that kind of emanates from you, which is extremely magnetic. And what attracted my eye instantly, and I was like, well, who is this? Who is this person? Because this is something extraordinary. And my belief is it's your authenticity and you being able to live your true self. So thank you for presenting that. I'm so glad you found a way to help yourself and serve so many others. There's so much to unpack there
Yes.
with how long ago it was, how much I hope society is learning and evolving in terms of language at the very, very basic level, because we've got so much more that I need to use every day, given that I'm 50. The trans world in my bubble, my world, didn't exist growing up. So had one of my friends had that same sensation of not knowing who they were or quite where they fitted, because people love a box and they love to fit you into it, regardless of whether it's religion or what you eat, never mind your gender and identity, then it wouldn't have been easy to find, if at all. So if it was 4.5 years ago that you started your medical transition and you're now 24,
Yes.
so this was
Right.
when you were 17. This is, it's enough years. My brain is not going to do maths this morning, but it's enough time ago that more of us were ignorant about the possibilities in the world. The fact that you didn't have a visible role model must have made all of that a lot harder. So when you did, how did you begin your medical transition? Was it straight in with hormones, or was there more to it? And were you prepared psychologically?
So I had a couple of months from booking my first appointment with the London Transgender Clinic, which was a diagnosis formally of gender dysphoria, what trans people have that makes us trans, that discomfort between our brain and our body. So not feeling comfortable with our sex assigned at birth. And I booked that appointment in October, ready for January, and I didn't know how long it would take me to go on hormones. I was willing to go on any short waiting list rather than 2 years on the NHS, which it was at the time. Now it's an average of 5 to 7. It's just ridiculous. So I knew that I was going to be taking testosterone, the male hormone. And like you say, not enough visible role models. The role models I had were YouTubers, because there was a time period when I realized I was trans between 2015 to 2016, where there were a lot of trans male YouTubers that seemed to be like the set career path. It was like TikTok creators before, and I couldn't find any British YouTubers. I think I only found about two. So not only did I not have trans male visibility, any celebs or notable figures to look up to, not even historical figures that we still don't know of today, I didn't have any, on Homeland. So I had to basically be my own role model. So the way that I found out about what testosterone does is through YouTube videos, Reddit threads, Tumblr forums. I mean, I really had to go searching on the internet. I mean, I had some sort of idea of what it would do to me. I knew it was going to be a male puberty effectively, but the other effects I wasn't so sure about. And when I presented myself to the gender psychologist on January, that went really, really well. I had a report written about me. I basically just had to detail my feelings. And then I had another follow up to discuss surgery. I said basically simply not ready to discuss that yet, but they just wanted to check in with me. This was during March. And then 9th of April, yeah, they sent me to the endocrinologist, so the hormone specialist at the clinic, who gave me a consent form and basically a letter which listed in very, very basic terms what would happen to me. You know, broad shoulders, increased libido, increased energy, increased appetite, facial hair, Adam's apple growth, period stopping. So I was encouraged to have a full read of these, check my understanding of them, and then basically sign the form to give me a nice packet of tester gel, which comes in a pump. So it's like a hand sanitizer, and it's obviously testosterone in gel form. And I was instructed to apply it on my shoulders every single day, one pump on each shoulder, fresh out the shower when the pores are open. And the reason they said apply it on your shoulders is because it's actually the most absorbent part of your body. What I wasn't aware of was menopause, which is obviously why we're talking today.
Hmm.
That was not on any of the forums that I read. That was not pre-warned to me for whatever reason. I think it is due to maybe lack of research, and I think I recall that my specialist had 360 patients at the time, so perhaps there were patients that were not presenting those symptoms, or they were not showing in some certain types of people and testosterone levels, or maybe some people just hadn't gone through the menopause at that point yet. I really can't say, but that came as a shock to me. And then I sort of had to go from word of mouth from friends who had already started medically transitioning or some other things. So a couple of surprises came in the first 3 weeks. So that was when the hormones were really kicking into my body. My body was going, what the hell is this? So for the first 3 weeks, I had 2 dinners a night. I don't think I've ever experienced such hunger pains. And now I know why men have such a larger calorie intake. And then I had really, really vivid nightmares as well, and night sweats. So that wasn't listed on a consent form because I guess it's sort of a rare sort of phenomenon, I guess, that happens to some people. But it was something that a trans male friend had advised me about, and we were joking about it. But God, yeah, those nightmares were so vivid. And I just remember waking up in hot sweats and then even walking to the tube station wearing a shirt and a jumper. I was just in absolute, sweats. So that was really, really fun for the first 3 weeks. And then obviously the first significant change that happened to me was my voice dropping, which I was very, very pleased about because that was something I'd been dreaming of for years and years, not just, the aesthetic, but, the voice that matched as well. So yeah, I started on testosterone, and then I had to move eventually to libido, which is a stronger form of testosterone because unfortunately my periods came back after a couple of months. So they go away pretty instantly, but then they came back with quite force, which was quite scary. So I was put onto libido, and then that was administered via injection, still is to this day, every 10 to 12 weeks. And that just, that increased every single thing. I mean, the Adam's apple was popping, the jawline came in, no beard as of yet, unfortunately, but the face really started taking shape once I started taking libido, and it also helped to kickstart, the broadening process. So once I had top surgery, my chest surgery, my body started falling into place, and I think it took around 3 years for me to settle into my body, and I think for my face and my body to find its sort of masculine shape. I mean, if you look at pictures of me without wearing makeup when presenting female, from my personal experience, I don't think I've changed that much. But it's these little eccentricities like the jawline more chiseled, or the flattening of the space around the nose and the cheeks. My eyelids have become more hooded. That's been another interesting effect. So all of these little things have happened, but it was around 3 years that I really saw them like fall into place, which was really nice. But hey, that's puberty for you, isn't it? And that's exactly what I'm going through.
I suppose it is. And it's interesting the way that you describe it, and testosterone, and the fact that sort of in the manosphere, we often refer to menopause as puberty in reverse. But the
Yeah.
knowledge or lack thereof with many, not all by any stretch, but with many medical professionals around hormones, whether it is as a supplementation for those going through menopause, still identify as women, or whether it's transgender. I feel there is a lot more research to do, because you say that maybe the nightmares were a rare side effect. But if you look
Mm.
at even paracetamol, some of the side effects are 0.0001% probability. They still have to draw attention to them. So were you given any warning about that your periods may or may not return, and how they would be, and how to
Mm.
handle night sweats?
So I was given warning about the periods possibly returning. It was made very clear to me that actually six of 350, 60 patients this lady had, their bodies had actually converted testosterone back into estrogen. And she said, I have to tell you this in case it happens to you. I can't remember the signs that she told me to look out for, but I think it would have been very obvious if there was no changes on testosterone, and I would have had to report it back. But yeah, the night sweats and other things like that, I guess they probably considered them to be more minor, so I wasn't really given much guidance around that. I think when you're speaking with medical professionals, it's very black and white, it's very blunt, it's very, this is going to happen, and if this happens, then come back to me. But the problem is that the checkups have got 6 months, in between. So it's every 6 months I'm seeing the clinic. So, that's a very long time for any changes that I need to report, to kind of deal with myself. But I was able to email or call them if there was an emergency. But basically, I was really left to sort of my own accord. But that was good, because I'd rather figure it out by myself. But I found quite a lot of comfort when I was discussing it among the community. But
Mhm.
I guess the big thing that was not being discussed, and is still such a taboo, is obviously menopause amongst trans men that take testosterone.
The suppression of the estrogen.
Yes.
So, with that change in hormones, yes, it is the desired effect that you're looking for, because of the end result that you're looking for.
Yeah.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, you say the changes were within 3 weeks as well. So, did they say they were going to titrate up once your body was able to handle it, or was it straight
Yeah.
in as heavy as possible?
It was straight in with the dose according to my blood levels. So I didn't have naturally low or naturally high testosterone levels. They were okay. There wasn't anything adverse there. So for my blood levels, I was told to do one pump of Testogel on each shoulder. Some trans men have lower natural or testosterone levels but high estrogen levels, so they're then instructed to apply 2 or 3 pumps. So it differs from body to body. But the libido is that's 1,000 milligrams of testosterone in that large needle that's injected at the top of my buttock. So that's very, very strong. But before I even got onto libido, I already started feeling the effects of menopause, and they've increased throughout the years. So I would say I started feeling the symptoms about 1 year in. So the first key symptom for me was just feeling like I constantly had a UTI, so urinary tract infection. Feeling like I needed to wee all the time, going for a wee, and feeling like I needed to wee again. Then dryness in the lower region. I had bottom surgery, so that was very concerning to me. But I just put it down to maybe just hormone changes. And then I found that I kept getting, increasing levels of dryness and the UTI, feeling of having a UTI, and then all the urine samples were coming back negative from the GP. So I was like, something's up here. And where I had those alarm bells ringing with the periods coming back, I thought, is something else going on inside of my body? I thought, God forbid, am I converting, the testosterone back into estrogen? And about, I think, a year and a half in, I thought, no, I best present these symptoms to my GP. and unfortunately, they weren't well equipped to know what it was. So I had every suggestion thrown at me under the sun. I had maybe you have a long-term STD. I didn't know there was such thing. Maybe you have something wrong with your kidneys where you're taking testosterone. So I think it slows sort of kidney functions down. So that's why you have to have such regular blood tests. I had somebody ask if I was pregnant. I kept being told to keep taking pregnancy tests, and I said, if I am pregnant whilst taking 1,000 milligrams of testosterone, I'll give you £1,000,000, because I don't think that's the case. Um, and then I was sent to have an ultra scan, which was really invasive, and then a smear test, which was even more invasive. And I don't have lower dysphoria, so I don't experience gender dysphoria in the lower region of my body, which is why I personally haven't gone to have bottom surgery. To be quite blunt, it's just there for me to urinate. Like, I don't feel the need to go through an invasive 3-year surgery and go through lots of pain for something which I don't really care about. But when I had that smear test and the person was down there, for lack of better words, and remarking about how they hadn't seen anything like this, that really didn't make me feel very comfortable, to say the least. And where they hadn't had any training, or perhaps a trans men entering that space might have been a rarity for them, they felt the need to like throw all these comments at me. And I think another example of that as well is when I was being asked if I was pregnant, a lot of the GPs would say, do you have sex like a man or a woman? Meaning which part of the body. And I thought, my goodness, imagine if you asked that to a cisgender person, to someone who's not trans. When when you're trans and you're out and you're open, I always say to people, it's like having an open Q&A session every single day. You have to pick and choose where to come out. And yeah, those were really, really invasive situations for me. And so it took having all of that being done in those 6 months, waiting for a checkup with my endocrinologist, and then presenting myself to her. And she went, oh yeah, those symptoms, they're vaginal atrophy. Oh, okay, thanks.
As though it's so simple, and there you are. I mean, no boundaries anywhere, and then all of a sudden, so that's how you learnt about menopause.
Quite literally, just that one sentence after 6 months of, let's not beat around the bush, turmoil and invasive procedures and putting off my body and whatnot, and feeling like I had something wrong with me. And right there and then, she just said, right, we need to get you on Ovestin, so estrogen cream, but a very small dose. And I panicked and I thought, well, what if I need a larger dose? Is it going to reverse me? And she said, no, Tate, it's not that powerful. Because I thought, what if I start applying this cream and I turn back into a woman or something?
I totally
Yeah,
understand the fear. And after everything you've been through, the last thing you want is something that's going to send your
yeah,
transition backwards.
exactly. So that was not going to be the case, luckily, but I was instructed to, go right to, my NHS GP and get it, because they did shared care, my private clinic and my NHS clinic, luckily. And so I was prescribed the cream, and I had to apply it every single night, both internally and externally. And that relieved the symptoms and soothed them, quite soon after. But what I found was that, a couple of weeks, I was instructed to apply it instead of every night, 2 to 3 nights a week.
Mm-hmm.
But I found that actually, even if I just missed one evening, the symptoms would flare up again. So over the years, I've, still maintained that, applying that cream 2 to 3 nights a week. But I feel like I'm tackling a whole nother level of the menopause now, because I actually fast tracked the perimenopause stage and went straight into menopause. And now I'm dealing with brain fog and forgetfulness and itching, and increased night sweat. So actually, that was probably another early symptom for me, because where I take testosterone, I'm hot all of the time. And then I found myself getting more hot, and I was like, okay, has my testosterone increased? Am I just getting more manlier now? Like what's happening? And so it's like a Venn diagram. I don't know whether I'm hot because it's testosterone or I'm having a menopause hot flush. But now, I've relieved those symptoms in the lower region, but now I'm tackling another obstacle, which is brain fog. So I'm trying to do more walks to clear those neural pathways, which helps reduce that brain fog. Lots and lots of to-do lists everywhere. The amount of notebooks I have, I write down every single thing so I don't forget. It's still something I'm navigating, but I think I'm doing a really good job of it, and most importantly, sharing about it as well. So thank you, obviously, for commenting earlier about noticing my light on Instagram. That's really, really sweet of you, because I took the decision to make a big post about my experience of the menopause, and I was very, very scared to do that last year because basically it would out the fact that I haven't had bottom surgery, and I don't like to reference that even in my speaking engagements or talk about private areas of my body. But what I received, a really warm welcome from the community, and actually quite a lot of people said I'm feeling the exact same way. And by me just sharing one little bit of my story and how not to go about it for any GPs that read it, it's really, really helping people.
There are a number of questions that spring up from that.
Yes.
There is so much that you've had to experience and learn for yourself. We all need to learn boundaries. And if there is something that we don't know about, I suppose putting it back on yourself, would I be comfortable if somebody asked me this? Yes, I would. Can I ask it sensitively? Or is it any of my business? No, most of the time it's really not. But what I really wanted to ask was, have you implemented any lifestyle changes to support your health and your hormonal balance to negate the symptoms of menopause?
I think I've really just increased the level of exercise that I do to clear my head. I set reminders for applying my cream. I guess that's all I really can do. And I've made changes to my wardrobe. So, a lot of my friends are horrified to see me not wearing thick layers in the winter. But, I have to because I just feel so hot all the time. I mean, I'm constantly reading up about what I can do to help me, and I find quite a lot of useful resources. But what I'm finding is actually there's quite a lot of cisgender women who are going through the exact same as me, and bless them, they're not getting much support either. So we're all in the same boat here, and I hear these horror stories of how they've been treated by their GP. So I feel like we really need more resources for anybody that's impacted by menopause, because I think we could probably swap, and exchange stories of what's worked for us. But yeah, definitely that wardrobe change, increase in exercise, not eating spicy food. For some reason, that tends to flare me up. I think that's just me personally. And eating salty foods as well, because that increases the dryness I've found. But yeah, so those are just a couple of things that have worked for me.
In one of your posts, you also mentioned that your anesthesiologist said they had never seen anybody so excited when they went in for surgery when you chose to have top surgery and you were able to. And I just thought that was so delightful and so brilliant because you were aligning your body even further with your true self. Obviously, the excitement at looking in the mirror to see what you felt from the inside sounds like a positive thing to anyone listening. Were you prepared for the psychological impact that was going to have, along with menopause as well? Because I think often the psychological effects are very underplayed. And were you prepared for a range of feelings, I suppose, when you come out? Because it all sounds great, but I can't believe it's as simple as that.
You are right. It's not as simple as that. And this was the first time that I went under anesthetic, which I think is why the anesthesiologist was so surprised as to why I was so excited. But I told him it's because I've been waiting for the surgery all my life. I didn't realize the anesthetic would take so long to wear off. I thought that I was going to be, being 21 at the time, spring back into action. It was supposed to be 2 weeks recovery. It ended up being 4 weeks because unfortunately I developed a nasty wound infection. But I found that even talking to my housemates or trying to talk, I mean, nothing was coming out. I mean, I was just staring into space. I was so zoned out. I was very, very scared for the surgery. Naturally, with my anxiety, I catastrophize a lot. So as I was going on to, the operating table, I was thinking the absolute worst. And when I came to, I was very relieved to have one, woken up, and two, to not feel the breasts on my chest anymore. But unfortunately, I still had that feeling of a heavy weight because I had that major surgery done and I had to wear a compression piece to reduce the fluid. It was very logistic. Do that, don't eat that, recover here. I was concentrating a lot about what recovery was going to be like and my scars bleeding and bandaging them. I can't really remember anything from that time, I'll be honest. I think I was just a bit robotic, taking care of myself. I had housemates and friends helping me. But yeah, I think psychologically, yeah, I didn't realize how long that was going to take to wear off. And then that wound infection didn't help as well. But fortunately, my workplace were really supportive and said, we'll do a phased return for you when you come back into work. Because my head was like, my brain was just really, really scattered. And being a legal secretary at the time, key part of the job is attention to detail. And, I worked at, a Magic Circle law firm. So I had to be switched on all of the time. I had very large tasks to do. I mean, nothing was simple, especially when we were working remotely during lockdown. And I just said to my manager, I can't go do 8 hours with my state of mind. And she said, don't worry, we'll do 2 hours, then 4 hours, then 6 hours each week and increase depending on how you feel. Um, so that took a long time to really, get over. And I think I really underestimated like what I had done as well. I was just so blasé about it to my friends and colleagues, but because it was such a big deal for me and my image rather than a surgery. But I'll be honest with you, mentally and physically, it did take its toll on me. So that also informed my decision to not have bottom surgery because I think that and a hysterectomy potentially in the future. I think that's going to be the only surgeries that I have. And then when we talk about menopause, you know, uh, the brain fog, I think, has been the most, cognitive thing that I've had to consider. The rest of it has been pretty much physical. But I found that the walks help and writing things down a lot. And yeah, I'm still doing lots and lots of research into how to help me with forgetfulness. Yeah.
It's one of the most bothersome symptoms for pretty much everybody I've spoken to because many people
Exactly.
need to
Right.
be on their toes and able to have information at their fingertips all the time, depending on their work or their life. And nobody enjoys standing up in front of other people or even having a conversation and words just falling out of their head and they feel incompetent and ineffective. It's a really debilitating feeling for many people. If you
Mm.
find the magic answer, please let me know.
Yeah, I'll drop you an email.
Wonderful. Thank you. Having lived 19 years of your life presenting as female and now being the man that you are, you do have a privileged insight that many people are curious about.
Yes.
Can you share any particular insights with us from both sides that can make society better?
Well, it's a great and loaded question, and I'd be happy to share my insights. I guess the first thing that comes to mind is the privilege, which you've touched upon, that I have as a man, and the key example there is being able to walk home at night in the dark
Right.
safely. No one bothers me. No one catcalls me, harasses me anymore. Men really need to be thinking more about how they make women feel safe in the streets. I find myself crossing the road from women now because I don't want them to think, oh God, there's a man that's walking so fast behind me. Because I used to be in that situation and I know what it's like to be scared and have to leave events early and have to put your keys in your knuckles. And I don't want any woman within my proximity to feel that way. And I think a lot of men really underestimate that, yes, you can nip to the shops when it's dark to get some snacks and no one's going to whistle at you or catcall or try and follow you home. So realize that you have that privilege and use that privilege by making other women feel safe. Another key example is workplaces. I've had to learn the word mansplaining, and that's been very useful to me because sometimes I have to check myself and go, oh, am I over explaining that too much to this lady? Or, oh, I need to check myself there because that was kind of bordering on mansplaining. So over explaining and thinking that a woman's not going to understand. I don't mean to, but there are a lot of men, and it tends to be older men, especially within meetings, who talk down to women, who mansplain. And what I found is that just because the aesthetic of me has changed and I have this deep and authoritative sounding voice now, my ideas get listened to more than a woman's. In a meeting, in another space, in a conversation, a brainstorming session at work, it's not okay, and it's oftentimes where a woman has said the exact same thing as me. So there are two things that I could do. I could let it slide and reap the rewards and go, oh, yeah, I feel really manly now because I'm being listened to. I don't want to do that. So I take the second option, which is to pause and say, excuse me, she just said the same thing. Floor's over to her now. Because I made a conscious decision within those 2 years that I spent in the closet to go, right, I want to conduct myself like a gentleman. I don't want to be horrible. I don't want people to think that I'm this sort of lad, man about town. I want to conduct myself nice. I know I'm polite. I've always been innately masculine anyway, whatever that means to certain people. For me, it means a lot. And I just want to stand up for people because I went through a lot presenting female, catcalls, harassment, inappropriate comments in the workplace. I used to have short hair and I'd get guys going, oh, I've never been with a girl with short hair before. So I've always felt like I've been at the bottom end of tokenism, trans or not. But what I'm doing is I'm speaking about it and I'm making people check themselves and be aware of this privilege. And I think the main pattern with what I've just discussed and also what I've discussed throughout this episode is these inappropriate questions and this sense of, would I want somebody to ask me this? Do I need to know this? Is this going to add any value to my life? I think the general consensus here is that we need to treat each other with respect. We really need to be mindful of how we treat people and recognizing privilege, whether that's white privilege, whether that's pretty privilege or male privilege, and what we can do to, leverage that and make the world a better place.
Respect is fortunately a common theme in my most recent episodes, and I agree wholeheartedly that when we respect one another and the boundaries that go with that, it makes for a much better conversation. And the conversation makes a difference as well, actually connecting with people. I feel that many symptoms of menopause are resolved through simple connection with other human beings and knowing that you're not alone. There are people who support you and who have your back and who can help or at least listen. You've had to do a lot of research, obviously, on your own and online and down into the depths of YouTube. Are there more trusted sources now? And where would you find them apart from yourself?
Oh, well, thank you for that. I mean, I would gladly signpost myself as a resource, but I'll be honest, there's only been one that I trust, and that's Gender Hormone Clinic, which is another private gender identity clinic, and they post a lot of articles and resources. Just give them a Google about menopause. Even doing a simple search of trans menopause would bring them up. They've also been attempting to advise the British Menopause Society. I'm not aware of how that's going, but that's definitely a very, very trustworthy tool. I'm gutted to say I don't have more, but I think that really speaks to the lack of resources out there. Unfortunately, I am currently advising on some NHS clinical research and trials, and helping some other NHS researchers with, maternal care or the other effects of menopause. So I'm hoping that in a couple of years, those studies will be online and be a ready-made resource for other people. But yeah, definitely look to Gender Hormone Clinic.
And do you feel that your generation are going to be better equipped to support the trans community?
I think so, yes, because you'll be surprised the amount of people in my generation who identify as queer. It's really the norm now. It's not such a big deal. And I think that we are naturally the most accepting of trans people because we are just such a naturally liberal bunch. And dare I say, anything goes. And I love that I was born in this generation. I mean, I'm such an old soul. Like, I love my old movies. I love my history. But I wouldn't want to be born in any other time but 1999, because I've been able to grow up in this great, era, and I'm seeing all of the changes that are coming. And I hope that, I'm contributing to those changes with my activism and my consulting, because there just isn't any trans male role models out there. We have Elliot Page, which I am so happy about, but that's over the pond. We need more in the UK. I want to be that role model that I never had for my 16, 17-year-old self that didn't even know the label that suited him. And I want to carry that into future generations. I have a lot of hope. I really do.
Tate, I think you already are a fantastic role model and a terrific spokesperson for all of us. Where can people find you?
So you can connect with me on LinkedIn, which is where I've primarily grown my platform. You can view more of my consulting and policy work. And then Instagram is where I post a lot of reels, resources. So that's Tate Michael Smith. And I also have a website, which is www.tatesmith.uk, not .co.uk, because that's already been taken by a nice wine company that shares my name. But yeah, tatesmith.uk, you'll find all of my work there and my services if you're interested. And then Instagram, you can see my day-to-day life as a trans man and more resources like menopause, my experience of male privilege, and many more.
Thank you so much for all your time today, and I'm so glad we got to talk, so thank you.
Thank you for having me.
I will put all Tate's details in the show notes so you can find him easily. And a final note on Real Menopause Therapy: subscription remains free and sign up is obligation free. Have a look around, see how it works, and discover our qualified menopause therapists. Go to bit.ly/RM therapy. That's bit.ly/RM therapy, capital R, capital M, capital T, or click on the clickable link in the show notes. Thank you all for your support throughout 2023, and I wish you all a great break over the holidays and a very fabulous start to 2024. We have some fabulous guests next year, so as ever, I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.